to create a speakers list. If you would like to post a comment or question or be called upon to speak, please put your name, your comment, or your question in the chat box. The Secretariat will open your microphone or open the microphone to those who wish to speak at the appropriate time. This meeting is being broadcast for those who did not register for FWG5. The meeting is being broadcast live for the public. In addition, FWG5 will be recorded and made available on demand after the meeting. Links to both live and on-demand recordings will be made available on the meeting webpage. And then finally, for all of you who are contributors to FWG, we've set aside time at the end of each day for open dialogue with all of you, and the co-chairs will open the floor at that time. So we're really looking forward to discussing with you. At this time, I would like to turn over the microphone to our co-chairs, Andrea and Yo, to open the meeting. Over to you.
Liosim Chaniabo, Omawayaim. I think I need help opening my video so that everyone can see. I want to welcome each and every one of you. We have very important things to discuss. We are gathered here because we're facing a crisis situation. Our lands here in southern Arizona, United States, have been experiencing a record-breaking heat wave this week on top of a drought, which has a profound effect, a life and death effect on farming peoples like the Yaqui, like my own people, as well as my family, who are family farmers. So before we began, in order to bring our minds and hearts together and send special prayers to all those that are suffering from the climate crisis, not just our human families, but our nations and all of the nations of the plants and animals, the water and the air, and all of the natural world that is going through a crisis situation because of the very issue that we're here to talk about and address. So with that, I would like to ask my sister and Vice Chair for a little while more at least, Jane Au from the Kanaka Maoli peoples, Indigenous peoples of Hawaii, representing the Pacific region in this body. So I'd like to turn over the floor to Jane as we unite our thoughts and our minds and our hearts for the serious work that we've accepted to undertake during this meeting. Chokwe Utesia. Jane, the floor is yours.
Aloha nui mai kako, mahalo Andrea for the time, and mahalo Yo for the time. It's an honor to be here this morning with everybody. It's been an honor to serve as the vice co-chair in this position. As Andrea said, we have a lot of important work today, so we want to just thank everybody for taking the time to be here. I know we're all joining at different times in the day to carve out this space, but we appreciate everybody's contributions and thoughts being shared. And we look forward to these next few days. Mahalo nui. I'll pass it to Yo if he has any comments to make this morning.
Well, thank you very much, Jane. Actually, perhaps I can save my comments for after you welcome us to the meeting. Thank you.
Of course, thanks. I'm gonna open us briefly with a couple of chants this morning to help get us focused and centered for the day. Thanks, everybody. E ho mai, kai ke mai luna mai e, o nā mea huna no e au, o nā mele. E ho mai, e ho mai, e ho mai e. kai ke mai luna mai e. O na mea huna no e au. O na mele. E ho mai. E ho mai. E ho mai kai ke mai luna mai e. O na mea huna no e au. O na mele. E ho mai. E ho mai. E ho mai e. O nauna ka hala me ka lehua. He halele hua no ia na ka noe. O ka uno ia e ano inei e li anei. Hoi o te hiti mai a hiti mai no o ko. A hiti puno me ke aloha. Aloha e. Aloha e. Aloha e. Mahalo nui, everybody.
Chokwe Utesia, Jane. I, for one, am very, very grateful for your continued participation in that way of bringing us together with your Indigenous knowledge and spirit through the chants that you consistently have offered us. And I'm very grateful. Choku Desia. I needed it this morning. I know all of us probably did as well. We're going to have some housekeeping comments by the Secretariat, but first of all, Yo and I have been asked to just give some words of welcome and also just briefly to reflect on our situation as the outgoing co-chairs. We will very soon be seating the new co-chairs and new vice co-chairs, but we've been asked to say a few words to tell you how we feel and what the experience has been, and also just to welcome you and open you to the meeting. So I'd like to ask if Yo would be able to begin.
Sure. Thank you very much, Andrea. And respectful greetings to you and to everyone who has gathered here for this meeting. Really appreciate everyone taking the time to participate and join us in this meeting. So yes, just to begin, I guess to not only welcome all of you to the meeting, but as one of your outgoing co-chairs, I would like to express thanks to a whole range of people. First of all, to my fellow members of the Facilitative Working Group. Thank you very much for your collegiality, your patience, and your hard work and support to myself, as well as to Andrea and Jane and Irina during our term as co-chairs and vice co-chairs of the FWG. We relied on you heavily throughout this past year or so for an extensive amount of work, and we very much appreciate the support you've shown us. I'd also like to thank the Secretariat for your professionalism and your unflagging support to all of our work. The best Secretariat in the land, in my opinion, and you've been very, very key to everything that we've done. If we were able to meet in person, I would give you chocolates and lays, among other things, but perhaps next time. Also, would like to pay my respects and gratitude to all those of you who have participated in the work of the FWG and the LCIPP as contributors. Those of you who are here with us today, those who have joined us over the past year or so, contributing in different ways in different contexts to the work of the FWG and the platform. In my view, in many ways, you are sort of the beating heart of the work that we do, giving us necessary feedback as well as constructive criticism and pushing us to do the best that we can for our mission. And last but certainly not least, I would like to thank Andrea for being an extraordinary partner throughout this process as co-chairs. I've learned a lot from you in many ways, and I hope I have not messed up too much in being your partner as co-chair throughout this process. In my language, Andrea, that's it from now. Thanks. Over to you, Andrea.
In my language, ewi. Yo, we said we wouldn't do this. That's why I had Yo go first, so I could say ditto, because that's what he was going to do if I went first. But I want to echo all the thanks and recognition that he has provided. Reflecting in a different way, even from just being a member, being a co-chair, you see it a little bit different, or in addition to, maybe is the way, there's a lot of additional things that we need to do, and we look forward to welcoming and assisting the new co-chairs and vice chairs in whatever way we're able to. I just want to comment, in addition to all the things that Yo said about the Secretariat, about the members, about our vice chairs, and the members of the International Indigenous Peoples Forum on Climate Change, and my particular advisors, the North America Indigenous Peoples Working Group on Climate Change, that guide my participation in this meeting in particular. I also want to thank Yo. It has been such a pleasure and inspiration to get to know you better in this role. You don't often meet somebody who is both wise and humble and a lawyer on top of that. So I want to say that I think part of the reason we've been able to get a lot of the work done that we were able to do in our term is because of the close relationship as partners and co-workers and co-chairs that we were able to develop and utilize in this process. And also thanks to Jane and Irene for your contributions to the team that we were able to develop. And of course, the Secretariat is a key part of that team, as are all the members and the contributions that we made. We're going to be talking about the work plan that we committed to carry out, and that all of us, or most of us, had a big role in developing, and I want to say including the members of the Indigenous Caucus, because we were all part of that process. I think looking at what we've done and what came out of it and what its impacts are will put us in a very good position to develop a very strategic work plan for the next 3 years, and look and see what are the most important things that we can take from what we've done together, both the challenges, the shortfalls, and the achievements, which we'll be talking about in the next few days, to build on that, to really create something dynamic and focused and achievable for the things that we really need to accomplish. And I want us to all think of what is it that we really need to accomplish? Why are we giving our time to this process? What is the importance for our peoples and the natural world and our future generations? And look at how we talk about what we've done and what we're going to do in the future in that light. So with that, I would like to conclude this opening session and pass the mic over to Coco, or another member of the Secretariat, that's going to take us through some housekeeping issues. And again, thank you very much, all of you, for your support for Yo and myself in this role.
Thanks so much, Andrea and Yo. And actually, Yo, if you want, you could proceed and walk everyone through the agenda and then adopt the agenda, and then I can do the announcements. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Coco, and thank you, Andrea. So colleagues, at this point, we would like to move to the adoption of the agenda for this 5th meeting of the Facilitative Working Group. The members should have received an advance copy of the agenda for your consideration and adoption. As you may have noticed in the circulated agenda, the draft agenda, this particular 5th meeting of the Facilitative Working Group will have 2 major objectives. One, we will review the progress that we have made as the Facilitative Working Group on the 12 activities under our initial 2-year work plan for the platform. And 2, we will work to develop a draft of the second 3-year work plan for the platform for the period of 2022 to 2024, a significant amount of work ahead of us. The draft for the second 3-year work plan for the platform is intended to be attached to the report of this 5th meeting of the Facilitative Working Group for parties' consideration in the upcoming COP in Glasgow. So in terms of schedule breakdown, today and tomorrow, we will focus on reviewing progress on the activities under our current work plan. The lessons that we learned during the implementation of the current work plan, the feedback that we've gotten will hopefully offer insight for development of the second 3-year work plan. And in that connection, on Wednesday and Thursday, or the third and 4th days of the Facilitative Working Group meeting, we will focus on the development of the second 3-year work plan for the platform. And in that work, we will, among other things, split up into breakout groups to try to put together the different elements of the work plan, and before convening as a whole to consider the draft work plan. And those breakout groups will have interpretation in English, French, and Spanish, which we also have in this plenary setting. So colleagues, that is the agenda, the draft agenda for this meeting. And I offer that for adoption by the meeting. Are there any comments on the draft agenda? I see Daly's hand. Please go ahead, Daly.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks, Andrea and Yo, for the opening, and as always, Jane as well. I wanted to propose to place a brief discussion on the terms of reference on the agenda, and it simply reflects my desire to make some comments and a proposal about the terms of reference that we've previously spoken of, but haven't yet adopted. So I don't know exactly where it can be placed. It's actually been, to be honest, difficult to go to the Microsoft team meeting website and look at it day by day rather than the full agenda. But it won't take very long, but thanks in advance.
Thank you very much, Daly. So we have a proposal from Daly to have a separate agenda item to discuss terms of reference. Colleagues, the floor is open for additional feedback on this. I will note that this discussion on terms of reference could possibly fit under either existing agenda item 3, which is reflection and discussion. And we do have a few possible discussion points for that agenda item, but perhaps this terms of reference discussion can fit there as well. It could also go under any other matters in agenda item 7. And so perhaps Daly could consider that as well, and colleagues for possible feedback on that. I think I saw Andrea's hand go up. Please go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you. I would suggest it could go under agenda item 7. because 3 is already very short for looking at a strategic overview of this work and this body, I think, and a lot of members have some things to raise there, but I think this deserves its own bullet point under other items. And I think that's my suggestion, is that's where it would be added, if that's acceptable to Daly and the body.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Daly, please go ahead.
Yeah, that would be fine. And again, it will be very brief.
Fantastic. Thank you, Daly. Colleagues, members, any other comments on the draft agenda, including this additional sub-item for agenda item 7? I do not see any additional requests for the floor, and I'm assuming that your hand is from the previous intervention, Daly. Right.
Apologies.
Great. Great. In that case, colleagues, we have adopted the agenda for our meeting here. Thank you very much. Now that we have approved the agenda, I would like to hand the floor over to the Secretariat to share some updates related to the upcoming UNFCCC calendar, as well as guidance from the UNFCCC Bureau, and some changes to our membership in the FWG. So please, Coco, go ahead.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Yo. First, I would like to give you updates from the Bureau. As all of you know, the Bureau in this time of pandemic has played an important role keeping the UNFCCC process moving forward and making decisions where sessions haven't been taking place. The good news for FWG is that all of the important or all of the mandated decisions will happen at a moment, namely in Glasgow, when an in-person session is scheduled to take place. And so as normal process at FWG meetings, the Secretariat provides an update on the Bureau meetings. And in this case, the last meeting of the Bureau had no matters that were going to have any effect on FWG business. As some of you attended the June virtual discussions or the negotiations under the subsidiary bodies, you see that the work is moving forward. The next scheduled in-person meeting will be in Glasgow around COP26. And so, of course, we're all working very hard to get everything ready for that. And again, issues relevant to the FWG's work in 2021, including its membership term, its current work plan, and the LCIPP review, are all issues for which the decision moment falls at a session that's scheduled to take place as per mandate, and that's again at the end of this year in 2021 in Glasgow. The Bureau may then find it proper to avoid pronouncing on requests FWG makes, since the Glasgow session itself can do so. And that last comment is in relation to a letter that the FWG sent to the Bureau seeking clarification. The Secretariat has not yet received a response to that letter. I'd like to now move on to changes in membership of the FWG. First of all, members, and then a comment about alternate members. Mr. Thomas Cameron of Canada replaced Mr. Elias Aborzik from Canada, who resigned in January of this year. Ms. Henna Hapla from Finland took Mr. Cameron's place as alternate. For the Indigenous sociocultural regions, Central and South America and the Caribbean, Mr. Tuntia Katan has taken up membership following the passing of Estebancio Castro Diaz. For alternate members, 3 nominations for alternate members are pending. The party membership for Africa and the party membership for Eastern Europe. For the UN Indigenous sociocultural region, Central and South America and the Caribbean, that alternate is also pending. And just requires a communication to the Secretariat, actually for all three of those. Mr. Co-Chair, I'll turn the time back over to you. Those were all of the announcements for now. Thank you. Over to you, Yo.
Thank you very much, Coco. Many thanks to the Secretariat for the useful updates. At this particular time, moving down our agenda, we are expected to elect the new co-chairs and vice co-chairs for the FWG. As colleagues may be aware, in accordance with Decision 2/CP 24, 2 co-chairs and 2 vice co-chairs are elected roughly annually from among the FWG representatives. 1 co-chair and 1 vice co-chair are representatives of parties, and the other co-chair and vice co-chair are at the moment representatives of Indigenous peoples. The election and rotation of the co-chairs and vice co-chairs will, in accordance with the decision, take into account regional geographic balance, as well as strive for gender balance. In that connection, I am pleased to announce on behalf of the party representatives that the party representatives have selected Thomas Cameron as incoming co-chair and Alik Muvundika as incoming vice co-chair. And we very much look forward to everyone's support to Tom and Alik for their roles. And I personally want to thank Tom and Alik for stepping up and agreeing to take on these important roles, especially given the significant amount of work ahead of us for the rest of our term. So thank you very much, gentlemen. And I would like to turn the floor over at the moment to Andrea to announce the co-chair and vice co-chair from the Indigenous Peoples representatives. Andrea, go ahead.
Thank you, Yo. And I also am very pleased to be able to share with you the selection by consensus of all 7 of the Indigenous members of the working group, representing the 7 what they call sociocultural regions of the world. And our selection, our nomination for co-chair is Hindu Ibrahim from the African Indigenous Peoples sociocultural region. And our nomination for vice co-chair is Mr. Tuntiak Katan from the Latin America, Caribbean sociocultural region of Indigenous peoples. I will say one comment on that, and that our consideration of Tuntiak was taken on the merits of his experience, recognizing that there would be in our current way of working some challenges regarding language. Unlike Estebancio, he does not fluently speak English or read English. And the strong view of the consensus of all of the Indigenous members is that we really need to see how to step up to a new level to enable the participation of Indigenous peoples that do not speak English in this process. We're about to be faced with the selection of new members, and we don't want to need to be restricted by who can function in English, not just interpretation in the meetings, which we appreciate, but translation of the documents that we are charged with reviewing and editing and commenting on. We know this is going to be a challenge for the Secretariat, but as we have affirmed, we aspire to inclusiveness in this body. And this will be one more important step and maybe a motivation for us to look to see how we can cover that logistically, not just in Spanish, but in the other languages where we may have Indigenous members that speak only Russian or speak only French, etc. So with that, I would like to convey our collective support for these nominations, and also commit as myself and Yo and Jane and Arena to assist you in whatever way we can to make your difficult and challenging role, time-consuming role, a little bit more easy as we move forward. Choku Tessa, thank you very much.
If I can just hop in, co-chairs, just a little housekeeping. We do want to take a family photo. So if all of the FWG members would kindly turn on your camera, we're going to take a family photo of this meeting. I'll turn off my camera because I don't belong with you, although we're undyingly supporting of you. So Nina, if you could just take the family photo. And congratulations to everyone. What a wonderful way to start the meeting. Nina, can you just maybe vocally guide us through?
Perfect. It'll actually be Patricia.
Patricia, thank you.
Hi, so hello everyone. If you can all turn on your cameras. I'll do 1, 2, 3.
Sorry, I have a fly here, so I'm not waving for attention. I'm trying to get rid of the fly. Sorry.
Okay, we'll do it again. 1, 2, 3, and go. I'll just take a couple more just so we can get everyone. And then a last one. 1, 2, 3. Thanks, everyone.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Patricia. And for our FWG members and for our contributors, we're going to take a quick break. And the Secretariat and the outgoing co-chairs and vice chairs will join our incoming co-chairs and vice chairs for a very quick briefing. For all of you, we're happily running just a little bit ahead of schedule. So we would invite you to return in 20 minutes. So at 10 minutes until 5 o'clock Central European time, we'll reconvene. And for all of you co-chairs and vice chairs, the Secretariat has sent you an invitation, and we'll just go over to that other link. Yes, Andrea.
Don't we need to formally, by consensus, accept the nominations of the vice chairs and co-chairs? I think that would be important for the record of the meeting, that we have accepted them before we break to brief them.
Yes, so to formalize our selections of Hindu and Tom as incoming co-chairs, and Tuntiak and Alik as incoming vice co-chairs, may I take it that the FWG membership agrees by consensus to these selections? If you object, please indicate. Otherwise, I will take silence as acceptance.
Hindu has her hand up. I don't think she wants to object. Oh, okay. No, okay. That's a hand that's moving around my screen. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
I see no request for the floor. Colleagues, thank you very much. The selections are accepted by unanimous consent of the membership. Congratulations, everyone.
Rianak, thank you.
And yes, so a little bit of a break and we'll be back soon. Thanks, everyone.
Coco, do we go back into that other room?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, you should let people know that to make sure that they know.
Yeah.
Hindu and Tom and Alec and Tuntiak, there's a different link to do our coordination meeting right now. So make sure you check your email. Thank you.
need your guidance and your wisdom. Because Jen, yourself, and your secretariat,
Well, yes, the Secretariat has been incredibly helpful, including with the speaking notes. So you have that
So everyone, hello, this is the Secretariat. Would like to welcome you back to the second part of our first day of the 5th meeting of the Facilitative Working Group. And when the co-chairs are ready to start, we're in your hands. Welcome back, everyone.
Thank you very much, Coco. And firstly, I would like to thank the co-chairs before us, Andrea Yo, the vice co-chair, Jen Irina, for the wonderful work that you take us through it for all those last months. Even with all the challenges of COVID, you really did a great work, and you will be an inspiration for Tom, myself, and also for Alik and Tuntiak. So thank you really for that. And I also would like to thank the co-chairs before you, Pasang, Majid, and then the vice co-chairs, Rodion, and sorry, I forget the name because it's from the government. So I really would like to thank all of them because they have been the first initial co-chair of the Facilitative Working Group, and they really set the tone because it's a start from the beginning, and you also follow them. And now it's our turn. So of course, Tom and myself will try our best to take the work, maybe not as best as you did, but we will really promise to also do our best to take it up. Before to take it quickly to the agenda item 3, I really would like firstly to give the floor to my co-chairs at least to say his thanks word, and we can go through the work. Tom.
Thank you, Hindu, and thank you, everyone. I would also just like to echo my thanks to our previous co-chairs, Andrea and Yo, as well as vice co-chairs, Jane and Irina, and as well as our previous co-chairs, Majid and Pasang, and as well as Elvira and sorry, I'm forgetting the last one just on that. But no, thank you very much. It's really you all have really set the tone for a really collaborative facilitative working group, and I know Hindu and I are both looking forward to carrying that forward and really we know we have a lot of work to do to deliver the 3-year work plan by COP26, and look forward to our continued collaboration with all of you as we move forward, and thank you for your confidence. I'll pass it back to you, Hindu.
Super. So thank you very much. So this agenda item 3, I'm going to co-chair it, and I will handle the floor to my co-chairs for the agenda item 4. So agenda item 3 is reflection and discussion on the part 1. This is the one approach for the assessing the progress on the current work plan and approach to the second draft. So as we discussed earlier, in the earlier facilitative working group, we say the work plan, we need to assess it. We need to see what worked and what didn't work. And we need to learn from this work plan in order to build the second work plan for the next 3 years. And some regions have a regional discussions and come up also with the same ideas. Because of the COVID, we all know that most of the activities are achieved, but some of them got some difficulty because they require to meet in person in order to do it. So in this agenda item, we really wanted to reflect any discussions or any approach to the LCIPP that will be used for assessing this progress of this work plan. And we wanted to give a priorities to benchmark for the successful of the LCIPP. We don't want it to end up by just have a work plan and we didn't finish it, or we didn't have a concrete activities. So this is the agenda item 3 that have been created, and we wanted to have reflection on it. So firstly, I'm going to ask like the facilitative working group members to speak, and then the participant can also get the floor to give them comments. And be sure all what you are saying is really very important. If you didn't get the floor, you can also put it in the chat. There are many people from Secretariat that's supporting us, and that will take note of all the wonderful recommendations. You will come on it in order to build it a new good plan. So allow me firstly to give the floor to Andrea, because as the formal co-chair, she helped to build up this agenda item 3, and she requested to be the first one who give a brief update on it. So just to remind all of you, from the members to all the speakers, before you speak, please be brief. And then that can allow the other speakers also to get the chance and speak. So Andrea, over to you.
Thank you, Hindu, and I congratulate you on your election, your selection, you and Tom. That's the proper way to begin a statement in a UN meeting. So we collectively, the Indigenous members, we've been trying our best to have kind of intercessional, informal discussions among ourselves, so we can together see what we think about what's happening with the LCIPP and the Facilitative Working Group. So this agenda item came out of one of our discussions to have a chance to, as we said, talk about the forests before we talk about the trees. And just to recall, my region, and I do have a working group that works closely with me so that I receive that direct guidance from Indigenous peoples in North America, US and Canada, basically. There were two main objectives, or even beyond that, goals or intentions that we had for participating in what became the LCIPP. One was to bring the practices and the guidance and the worldview of Indigenous peoples into the UNFCCC process in a way that would actually contribute to reducing climate change that was threatening our very survival. That's number one. Number two was to do this work in a way that would uplift and uphold and reaffirm the rights of Indigenous peoples. All of the rights in the UN Declaration to participate, free, prior, informed consent, the right to the productive capacity of our lands, etc. So these are our two lenses that I just want to comment. And I think one, I think that we, it's a huge task to say, how can we, through this body, actually contribute to concrete action to reduce emissions? And we know that emissions are not reducing. One way is to really engage in the NDCs with the states. And we found out through our assessment that that isn't happening in very many countries. So I guess you might say that's a shortfall, but it's one that we must step up and focus on. Our lives are at stake here. So that's one. The other one, I actually didn't realize the progress or the influence, not just us, but the participation of the Indigenous caucus has had in the constituted bodies and the discussions until this session of the SBSTA. As co-chair, I had the opportunity to participate in Coronivia, in the discussion of the Paris Committee on Capacity Building, and the Warsaw mechanism, and also, just discussions of capacity building. And I realized how much rights, human rights and rights of Indigenous peoples was starting to permeate those discussions, even from non-Indigenous peoples. For example, the PCCB is organized with the Office of the High Commissioner on Human Rights, a workshop on capacity building and human rights. So I'm beginning to see that those issues and a lot of interest in Indigenous people's knowledge, not in an extractive or exploiting way, but we would call, ethical, rights-based, FPIC-based engagement, and how they can do that and integrate that. So I consider that a progress. And I'll stop there. We can certainly discuss these issues more, but these are the two main lenses that we, my region of Indigenous peoples, is looking at when we talk about what are we succeeding. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Andrea. merci pour ces positions, ces clarifications de ta région. Et je pense que c'est pour tout le monde, la mise en œuvre est très importante et nous devons aussi suivre comment on est en train de réaliser certaines activités afin de nous inspirer pour que les prochaines activités soient faites concrètement. Et pour tous les participants, le secrétariat a mis un lien sur les progrès qui sont faits pour tous les travaux qui a été déjà établi dans les premiers groupes de travail. Est-ce que vous voulez les regarder? Vous pouvez, et puis on peut traduire aussi si vous avez besoin de les regarder. Alors, je donne la parole aux membres du groupe de travail. S'il y a quelqu'un d'autre qui a besoin de faire des commentaires ou bien de donner des idées sur qu'est-ce qui est fait, qu'est-ce qui n'est pas fait, ou bien quelles sont vraiment les questions qui nous touchent vraiment sur la mise en œuvre de ces plans de travail. Alors, à qui veut la parole, levez la main et je vous la donnerai. I see Pasang raising her hand. Pasang.
Yes. Thank you, co-chair. First of all, I really would like to congratulate our new co-chair Hindu and Thomas, and also vice co-chairs, and wish you all the best wishes for your leadership and successful ending of our 2 years work plan, and also inviting our 3 years work plan ahead of us. And also, I would like to congratulate our past co-chair, Andrea and Yo, for your excellent work, especially pushing our safeguard issues. And we are really happy to be a part of the members of FWG that despite all challenges of the COVID and the pandemic, and also the impacts of the climate change that we have been experiencing now in our countries, that is smoothly moving ahead, and with the hope of dealing with the challenges, but also implementing what we are visioning to fulfill the 3 functions of the platform through the implementation of all the activities that we work together. And I also would like to express my deep sympathy, and also very sorry to hear the stories of our Nepali people, especially in Sindhupalchok and the Manang districts in Nepal, how many indigenous people and local communities are suffering from the massive flood recently due to the monsoon. So we should bear in mind that how the impacts of climate change have already felt with a little adaptive measures to even to save their lives. So this platform is although we are discussing on the issues and concerns of indigenous people and local communities, and also exploring our knowledge system to be acknowledged and addressed by the policymakers and state parties to be part of the climate change solution, but also we also need to think about it, the loss and damage caused by the climate change already, and who's going to bear those losses, and how our indigenous people and local communities will deal with those losses. So I believe like those issues and concerns also need to be discussed in our further plan ahead. With this one, and once more, I would like to congratulate our new co-chair and also vice new co-chairs, and really wish for you all the best wishes for your successful leadership, and we are here to cooperate with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pasang, and really sorry for what's happening in your region. We saw the videos and it's so sad to see every day the extreme weather event coming from all the regions, and this is the climate change, and this is why we are also fighting. And that's also, as Andrea said, we cannot talk about the knowledge without talking about the rights, and without linking to all the agenda items. And loss and damage may be one that we can really think about how we can also include it in our work. Any member from the Facilitative Working Group wanted to talk? Dali, do you want to speak? I'm seeing maybe you are searching for the hand raise.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Hindu. Again, congratulations to Tom, Alec, Hindu, and Tuntiak. I think this is, to me, it signals an important turning point on some of the issues, especially when the matter of the language describing the LCIPP as an inclusive and trusted space, that inclusive is an important word, and it actually means something, and words matter. So action is crucial. Just two quick points on the issue of the work plan. I think that it's crucial that we learn from what we experienced in our attempt to conclude 12 different activities, which were certainly interrelated. But the real question for me and the Arctic region has been to put forward activities that actually mean something to Indigenous peoples at the local, at the community level, out there and on the ground, where they live, work, where they exist, where they gain their cultural identity, everything about them. And I think that we may have in the first round gotten too caught up in identifying activities that may not have had a measurable and useful or constructive impact for most Indigenous people. So I just would like us to consider in the framing of the next work plan to keep that important overarching objective in mind, and to really hone in a strategic fashion on the things that are going to make a difference for Indigenous peoples, that are measurable, that are achievable, that are informed by the Indigenous membership of the International Indigenous Peoples Forum on Climate Change, as well as from our communities directly. And I know that in the course of the next, the remaining day today and the next 3 days, that we won't really have the benefit of that kind of feedback unless we create the space to do so. But that's my urging. The second element that I want to bring forward is the fact that we have seen, and this is just my own observation, that there is almost solely lip service to really embracing and advancing and promoting and implementing the rights of Indigenous peoples in relation to the impacts of climate change. That there's really I think too little understanding about how our rights have been impacted by climate change. And I say this from the Arctic region perspective, because now the science is revealing that not only is climate change happening at 2 times the rate, or the impacts of climate change happening at 2 times the rate in the Arctic, but actually even more so, that the rates are even faster. And our people out there and on the ground are seeing these impacts. They're losing lives because of the impacts. And this, of course, is related to our rights. And so I guess my main point is that rather than a stance of finding the interrelated rights of Indigenous peoples indigestible to states in this context, that we really need to find a way to trigger the direct implementation of the rights. And I just want to congratulate those in Canada for the adoption of Bill C-15, which is now law, which is focused solely on the implementation of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. This is huge. This is extraordinary. There are no other governments on earth taking this kind of action. And I think that if we consider how recognition of respect for and real promotion of the rights of Indigenous peoples can make a difference. This is a useful example. I know that there's more work to be done in this regard. And indeed, in Canada, this is where the work really begins. But in relation to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the difficulties that we've seen in gaining recognition of human rights in relation to Article 6, that, you know, it just has to be remembered that UN member states, including all of those engaged in the UNFCCC, the adoption of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples meant something. These words mean something, and they have direct, any actions have direct consequences on our communities. And I don't know what the answer is in terms of gaining something as significant, both legally and politically in this regard, but we have all said that the UN Declaration and the rights of Indigenous peoples as distinct rights, the status and the role of Indigenous peoples is at the core of what we do. Like being inclusive, let's figure out what are the most important, measurable, achievable actions that we can take to truly be responsive to promoting and protecting the rights of Indigenous peoples through the work plan. Right? And what are the practical and concrete things that can in fact be done so that we're very targeted and very focused and not, you know, though we've had some advances made through all these different activities, let's think more carefully about what in fact can be done to be responsive to these huge universal objectives. It sounds Pollyannish, but it's important. And it's important for, again, people out there and on the ground and living closest to the impacts that we're all seeing. So those are my initial comments on reflections about what we've done in this short period of time, and just remain hopeful and don't want to become a pessimist or a cynic about what it is that we're doing. So thanks.
Thank you, Dali. I think, yeah, hope is making us even doubling the effort to do more. And I really like the point that you say we need to see how the implementation at the local level will look like, because it is not only the international level that will take us out from this climate change. And of course, yes, the point is well said on the Canada. It's really a model for many of the countries that can learn on how implementing the Indigenous people rights can look like. And by the way, I also wanted to share this. DRC for the first time have also adopted a law on the Indigenous people's rights, and this is really like incredibly, countries are going more and more moving to this, and this is really great. So members, if anyone else wanted to speak, please just raise your hand. I think I got members from the Indigenous communities, members from the government. So just like give your comments, and after the members, as there are also Altern who wanted to speak, so then I can give the floor to Altern and open it to the participant. So any other from the members, please? Joseph, Yo, Elvira, Elvira, I will give you the floor after the members. So Irina, anyone else from the members wanted to speak on this? Yo.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. Just to very briefly echo at least a couple of points that have been raised in this agenda item. Actually, one particular point at the moment on the development of the next work plan for the platform, recognizing very much what Daly said about how when we put together the initial 2-year work plan for the platform, we did seem for the most part to have a certain approach to the activities that we put in the work plan, sort of expansive activities, sweeping surveys, that sort of thing, which in my view were important as sort of setting the stage or setting the table for the foundation for the work of the platform. But it also raised the issues that Daley pointed out about, and I think other members of the FWG have pointed out over the last couple of years, about making sure that the work of the platform has a meaningful impact on the ground with local populations and so forth. And I very much encourage other members of the Facilitative Working Group to keep that in mind as we populate, discuss, and finalize the next work plan for the platform, drawing on what we've already done, what I think is important work that we've done so far in the current work plan. Thanks.
Thank you very much. In your point, I think it's really very important, and because we saw how it was very low, the participation from African and Asia, we always like coming and asking again. So this is exactly the point that you said. Hope that we will get it in the next work plan. Anyone else from the members, please? Okay, so I will give the floor to the altern. There is Elvira who wanted to speak. Elvira, you have the floor.
Sí, gracias Hindu, gracias hermanos, felicidades a los nuevos compañeros elegidos en esta sesión. Tienen el desafío de trabajar y de culminar esta primera etapa del plan de trabajo y de sentar las bases para la siguiente, y creo que con su experiencia y su sabiduría lo van a lograr. Yo quiero en principio hacer un balance dentro del optimismo que las condiciones que hemos vivido en estos dos últimos años de la pandemia nos han puesto a todos en una situación difícil y en un desafío todavía mayor, y ese es un contexto que no quiere ser un pretexto, pero que es una realidad, ¿no? Y creo que mirando y haciendo ese balance, el primer plan de trabajo que se ha desarrollado ha puesto la piedra fundamental para conocer quiénes somos, dónde estamos y qué queremos. Creo que hay muchas actividades recurrentes en el plan de trabajo que nos van a permitir ese horizonte de seguir incidiendo a nivel del propio proceso de la convención, pero también hay muchas tareas que ya han sentado la base para una acción, como decían los hermanos que me precedían, de una acción concreta, de una acción en terreno, ¿no? Y si bien hay muchos estudios, hay una línea base, sobre todo definida en muchas de las actividades que tienen que ver con el mapeo, por ejemplo, en cuanto a los diferentes órganos de la convención, en cuanto al financiamiento. Ahora, sobre ese mapeo, creo que el desafío es plantearse nuevas acciones que pasen a la acción, como decía Dali, pasen a la acción concreta de la implementación de los derechos de los pueblos indígenas, y un espacio en el que se tiene que traducir ese derecho es el derecho, pues, finalmente, en términos de financiamiento, por ejemplo, el derecho al acceso directo a financiamiento. Ese sería un desafío enorme que pudiéramos, creo, avanzar en lo que viene para el siguiente plan de trabajo. El otro tema que quiero resaltar, que es muy importante, es este de la acción local. Lo que ha despegado la plataforma a nivel de la convención en el ámbito local y regional, creo que es importante destacarlo. En la región, por ejemplo, en América, se han despegado procesos interesantes de articulación y de acción en el terreno, ¿no? Quiero mencionar, por ejemplo, cómo Perú ha avanzado en una ley de cambio climático, y dentro de su ley de cambio climático, la conformación de una plataforma de pueblos indígenas articulada a los diferentes espacios estatales para incidir y para definir políticas, programas y acciones concretas en terreno. esto a la luz y al espejo de lo que es esta plataforma global. De igual manera, Bolivia ha avanzado muchísimo en este tema. Bueno, hemos tenido ahí un corte por varios temas políticos, pero en el horizonte político está muy claro la articulación de los pueblos indígenas en las políticas, en los programas de país. Y a nivel regional creo que también se han abierto escenarios interesantes. ¿Y por qué es importante vincular? Yo quiero recordar y llamo a la luz siempre esta decisión que hubo en la COP de Katowice, cuando se invitaba, en una de las decisiones se invitaba a las partes a que repliquen, a que implementen las funciones de la plataforma en los planos local, nacional y regional. Yo creo que este es uno de los desafíos más importantes que nos va a permitir llevar de ese escenario global al ámbito local la acción climática e involucrar en el terreno donde se están sufriendo realmente los impactos del cambio climático, poder lograr la participación y el involucramiento directo y además la implementación de los derechos de los pueblos indígenas. Con esas palabras quiero decir que pese a todas las circunstancias, hoy tenemos los cimientos sólidos para poder mirar ya hacia desafíos mucho más grandes, mucho más ambiciosos de esta plataforma. Muchas gracias y felicidades otra vez por la elección, hermanos.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Elvira. Thank you very much for all your comments, and thank you for highlighting also Bolivia's political advance on the indigenous people. So it's really very encouraging. Any other members? I do not see any hand from the Facilitative Working Group members or altern. So allow me to ask my co-chair if he have also any comment. Tom, do you have any comments before I go back to Pasan?
Sure. No, just I hope everyone can hear me a bit better. I was told my my headphones were a bit quiet, so awesome. No, just thank you very much to everyone who's contributed to the discussion. I think there's been some really useful points kind of from our region in the party side. I think there's a lot of cross-cutting views in terms of sharing some of the views. I think, you know, the first work plan was really broad and we covered a lot of ground, and I think everyone recognizes that it was there was a large amount of work, and I thank all the facilitative working group members for all their work on it. But I think now that we've kind of moved through or close to moving through the second year work program, or the 2-year work program, I think, yeah, what we should keep in mind over these next 3 days is really that streamlining and prioritizing. And I think, you know, both Daly and Andrea gave good points on what we need to be prioritizing, you know, making sure that we can make local level impacts to the extent that we can as a UN body for Indigenous peoples, I think is a key thing to keep in mind as we draft the work plan. I think also the NDCs is another area where we can be playing a stronger role. So looking at updating that activity. And I think the other point I would reflect on is the constituted bodies. And I think Andrea, you know, speaking in her role as co-chair, said that just the breadth of opportunities that exist for the FWG to be playing a role there and to reflect the voices of Indigenous peoples and parties in those bodies, I think is really worthwhile. And I think you know, that also touches on Pasang's comment around loss and damage and you know, looking at the task forces that are under there. I think there's a lot of opportunities in the UN system that the FWG can look to strategically leverage to increase the voices and perspectives there to also bring, you know, tangible results in other rooms too. So I think strengthening our coherence with other constituted bodies and doing that prioritization exercise on the next work plan that really does deliver the results that I think everyone shares, the same goals and objectives are kind of the two key takeaways that I take away from the discussion and offer from my perspective.
Thank you very much, Tom. Then, yeah, I'm sure that as co-chair, you will articulate it in the written into the Facilitative Working Group Work Plan 3. Pasang?
Thank you, co-chair. I just would like to highlight what our other earlier speaker mentioned, one of the challenges of the implementations part. One of the mandate of Facilitative Working Group is also having LCIPP at the regional and the national level. That is where our expectation and hope of really fulfill the three functions of the LCIPP. Because global level discourse on all our issues and concerns is important, but more important is how we implement on the ground level, so that our brothers and sisters on the ground who have been struggling due to the impacts of climate change, and also the struggle for protecting their knowledge and values and their cultural and traditional practices, that has been started seeing like a more kind of instead of acknowledging, but seeing in different angles. Consequently, that many indigenous peoples on the ground been brutalized, tortured, even killed. There are so many examples in Asia. So for that to acknowledge, to address, to recognize those parts, the role and contribution of indigenous peoples and women and local communities, it is very, very important that to implementation of this LCIPP on the ground level, since one of the activities of out of the 12 is focusing on the implementation part, but I see that implementation part has not that been progressed. So I, on behalf of our working groups of indigenous people represented to the FWG, I also would like to urge our other agencies like bilateral, multilateral agency, not seeing indigenous people just only as an objective to be dealt with, but support for the leadership, for building the capacity, and also sensitize on the role and contribution of indigenous people, and also take the responsibility, the state parties at the country level take the responsibilities of the establishing the platform, so that we can have a more space for the discourse on the climate change, and also exchange our knowledge and experiences to deal with the climate change adaptation and mitigation, and also raise the concerns and issues and concerns that our indigenous peoples are struggling on the ground just for survival and continuation of the knowledge system. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you for this important compliment of what you said earlier. It's really very important to see all the role of everyone, and calling to the agency is really important. So if there is no one from the Facilitative Working Group members, so before I go back to the participant, let me give you also briefly what I think about it. I hear and I really endorse all the challenges that highlighted by all the members here, and really share it even through all the regions is the same challenge, but I wanted to highlight also the progress. In the negotiation just the last 3 weeks that we ended, we got a progress on countries, many countries that call it on how they can include human rights and indigenous people rights into the Article 6. So this is really a good progress we can all salute, because we call on it as Facilitative Working Group members, also as indigenous caucus, but also government realized and they come up for the first time in all this negotiation that calling that indigenous people rights, human rights must be included on the Article 6. And in Coronovia discussion, it was also the same. So just to tell you that even there are challenges, but there is also some progress. And in my regions in Africa, we did organize a workshop between government members. Those are the focal point on climate change, and the scientific bodies and the indigenous peoples and some local communities. In those workshops, we work on how the government can include the indigenous people rights and knowledge into their national adaptation plans and into their NDCs. It has been very welcomed by all the government that we work with. They participated from Burkina Faso, Mali, Benin. And Benin, I wanted to thank my brother, who is also the member of the Facilitative Working Group with us, Chad and Niger. Those 5 countries, we have this consultation with the government, and they're willing to include indigenous peoples and indigenous peoples' knowledge and rights into their own national action plan on climate change and adaptation and mitigation. So this is also one of the progress due to the Facilitative Working Group and due to the references into the Paris Agreement. So we really would like to encourage any other government to see how the implementation at the local level might be a reality by opening the discussions between the indigenous peoples, local communities, and the government to see how it can be implemented as fast as possible. So I just wanted to give those also positive note from the work that we did. And in addition, a lot of challenges that is still, we really need those challenges. So I just end up short here. I see Andrea's hand coming back. So everyone, please try to be short, and then we can give the chance to our brothers and sisters who are here to do not be observer to also be contribute. So Andrea, you have the floor.
Thank you, Hindu. And as I said before, I also want to reiterate those signs of progress, how much human rights and rights of indigenous peoples is part of the broader discussion now that we never would have seen 5 years ago, or remember how it was in Paris, what it took for us to get that into the preamble. So I just want to point out that I've written 3 main areas that we can use for consideration, and hopefully the Secretariat can highlight them. One is to look to see how our work plan can actually contribute to the goal of the Paris Agreement to keep emissions no more than 1.5, understanding that in all of our regions, this is a matter of life and death. It was mentioned working more strategically with other constituted bodies, working with the NDCs, but looking to see how we can do that using our knowledge, you know, to support the reduction of the rate of climate change. The second is to really focus on what can impact indigenous peoples, our own communities on the ground. Of course, that's linked to the first goal, but to include, how to include their voices as well as their participation. And then the third, these are all interconnected, is to ensure that the rights of indigenous peoples are being further upheld, addressed, and implemented. So these are the 3 takeaways that I made from everybody's comments, and I hope that those can be the basis for assessing our new work plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, for capturing the 3 points. I think Secretariat is there, and then they will take note and add those 3 points to all the rest of what we did. But anyway, you are a member of the Facilitative Working Group, so you will be seeing and editing and adding the best language that can help the indigenous people. So in this work, thank you so much for that. So now allow me to open the floor to all the brothers and sisters, and also the friends from the state and everyone who is there who wanted to contribute. Raise your hand and I will see you in the speaker list. I will give you the floor. Please try to be very brief in order to give all the rest of the speakers time to also contribute, please. So I have Katie Yitongli. So Kate, if the Secretariat can open the mic of Katie, please. Thank you. And also, I just received a request from the Secretariat. Please, all the contributors, if you cannot hear, raise your hand, write your name in the chat, and then the Secretariat can just list your name in order, and then you can get the floor. So go ahead, Kathy.
Thank you very much, Hindu, Chair. I am Kathy, speaking on behalf of Yangal, the youth constituency. And first, we'd just like to thank all the FWG members, chairs, as well as the Secretariat for their amazing work. And also congratulations to the incoming chairs, especially to Hindu for her tremendous work at the FWG and in other mechanisms as well. We're also very happy to see the inclusiveness of FWG, of civil society stakeholders, especially that since we're speaking on behalf of youth, including indigenous youth. So as we have always mentioned together with other civil society constituencies in other committee meetings or other sessions, nothing about us without us. So we'd love to offer our support whenever needed, either in events, webinars, work, task forces, or various forums or various formats. So, and also, of course, we're very happy to see FWG's inclusiveness, and we encourage more bodies to do so. And so we're just like to say thanks and offer our support, and also looking forward to the next 3 days. Thanks.
Dear Katie, thank you so much for your offer. And we always, just to remind everyone, got the support from Yungo, from Women and Gender, that we always work with them, and they're always supporting Indigenous peoples and Indigenous people positions. And I think, of course, we need the youth to be included in how we are preparing and how we are implementing and sharing the information. And this platform is for everyone. It is inclusive. It has to be. And that's really very welcome from you. Thank you, Katie. And yeah, looking forward to work with you in all those agenda items. Anyone else? Because I do not see the names, maybe from my screen. If anyone write the name, or if anyone raise the hand who wanted to speak, please let me know or put your name down. And I mean, it is open to all of you, not only the Indigenous peoples, all the parties members who are following these discussions, all the, I had the name observer, but all the partners from other constituency who are here with us, Indigenous brothers and sisters, other UN agencies, all of you, if anyone wanted to contribute, please let me know. Chat or Coco, anyone from the Secretariat that has any visibility than me here, please. If anyone is anyone from the Secretariat that hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, so if you have any visibility than me, because I do not see a hand raised to make a comment. So if you have a different visibility, please.
Thank you. And Chad, can you confirm, have we gotten all of the people from the chat who would like to weigh in?
Yes, I confirm. And anyone, if you wanted to take the floor, please do put your name in the chat, and we will generate the speakers list for our co-chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Secretariat. So by the time that people put their names, I have a questions here for the Facilitative Working Group members, for anyone who wanted to take it or anyone who wanted to complete it. And this is also the way that we wanted to include everyone and discuss. So the question is, someone, Stefan Kipritu Geno, who right here, he say, I think right now it is a relevant space to call for youth engagement in the construction and implementation of the future work plan and the role of Yungo to facilitate this. So I assume that Katie already spoke about it, and of course it's the role of Yungo. So if anyone wanted to prepare to these questions, and by the time I'm seeing the co-chairs of the caucus and also Altern of North America, my brother Grams wanted to speak. So Grams, you have the floor.
Yeah, merci Hindu, Mingwich, and congratulations to yourself and Tom for taking on the role of co-chairs, and also want to extend my congratulations to Alec and Tuntiak for being our vice chairs, and grateful for all four of you stewarding us in the positive direction that Andrea, Pasang, Yo, and Majid provided. I wanted just to comment on a few things. One, just recognizing and affirming the important role that the Indigenous Caucus has with respect to the ongoing work of the platform, the Facilitative Working Group, and also the broader interactions of the UNFCCC. And I think part of that recognition is, in supporting your point, Hindu, Daly's point, Andrea's and Pasang's, around the need to prioritize concrete and measurable action that supports the advancement of Indigenous peoples within the international sphere, but also support them also at the domestic level. And part of that is the inclusion and upholding of rights, as I think Daly appropriately articulated, but also the meaningful and effective participation, both of just physical and technical participation, but also the inclusion of our knowledge systems, innovations, and science, all of which I think are important mechanisms for us to continue to do the good work that we're doing. I think this kind of agenda item is important, and I appreciate the addition of Andrea and contextualizing it around how are we making sure that the platform serves, the desires of the caucus and those Indigenous peoples on the ground, as opposed to just kind of finding our way captured within the activities of the UNFCCC. And I think that's an important and ongoing reflection that would be useful for us to do and potentially to incorporate into future meetings as well. I think that helps us contextualize the work that we're trying to do and make sure that we're all connecting back to the reason why we're here. I just want to support the inclusion of to kind of close the inclusion of youth and young voices. We know that there have been robust youth participation within the Indigenous caucus for years now, and I think that it's an important and ongoing consideration, especially in supporting the efforts of UNGO, but also the efforts of the caucus in doing that. And we've for the last several COPs have had an increasing number of delegates from different Indigenous youth from around the world. And so, maintaining that voice is an important element of our work that we do at the caucus. So miigwech, and really look forward to this conversation.
Thank you very much, Usukumiyeti. As we said in my language, really, Grams, we need the connection with the caucus and how really the two can be complementary. That's we make it a lot as comments, and I think we need to make it a reality in the next work plan, and we need that as evaluation, as you already said, as you also are altern for the Facilitative Working Group members. So I think your contribution will be really very important on the ongoing building. Anyone else from the participant wanted to take the floor? Okay, so is it anyone from the members wanted to comment on the questions? Anyway, it is the same Graham also said and Kathy said, and we all know Indigenous youth are always including in our work, and we need them more than and more. Anyone wanted to comment on it? Because I think maybe we can just gain the time and pass the agenda item 4, and then we can have also more discussions. So let me know if anyone have a comments on this. Okay, I see no one that have a comment on it. Thank you so much for this great input, and then your view on how we saw the implementation of the Facilitative Working Group for Majid. Do you want to come in? So good to see you. Do you want to come in before I close this agenda item, Majid? Okay, so maybe the internet connection. Yeah, so thank you so much really for all your views, your input, all the approach that you give in this work plan. We just finalizing or implementing or whatever, and we are preparing the new one. Any input, any comments are always welcome. Please send them if you have them in writing to Secretariat or to Tom and myself, and then we can see the way of how we can take them as writing and input them. It is always important to see how we can have diverse ideas, because what is important for us, it is not just a talking here, but it is implementing. And we all know our final objective is reducing the degree that even 1 or even 2 for us, it is killing the peoples. We have to reduce it, and we have to do it through the work that we are achieving here. So send any comments that you have. It will be always welcome, and we will always considering what you said here. This discussion will be ongoing, because the work plan for the 3 next years going to be discussed before to get adopted, and then this comment will be continuously in that discussions also. Now I would like to so as Coco said here, for any further comments that related to the agenda or to the progress, so please look at it in the website of the LCIPP, and you can get all the information in the different language that are in the website, and you can access them. And if you have difficulty also to access it, just to let us know, because we're just building it, and we need your comment to see if it's useful or not in order to improve it. So we will now open the agenda item 4 on implementation of the initial 2-year work plan, update on progress and way forward. So these today discussions will be focused on the activity 4, 5, and the rest of the activities will be discussed tomorrow. This part is going to be co-chaired by my co-chair, Thomas. So Thomas, je te passe la parole.
Merci beaucoup, Hindu. And thank you very much, everyone, for that past discussion. I thought it was really helpful to exchange views and to have that common basis to go forward. And I look forward to discussing it over the next few days, as well as we work on the next work plan. As Hindu mentioned, this next agenda item is really focused on getting a sense of where we are now on our current work plan, including what activities are concluded or close to conclusion, and how we'll get to a finalization by COP26. So we're going to be discussing activities 4 and 5 today. But before I begin, I understand that the Secretariat has a slide that they've prepared on just the status of the work plan in general. So with that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Nina.
Hi, everyone. These are just some slides to help guide those who are just learning about this information. But Tom, you can go ahead and I'll advance the slides as you find appropriate. Thank you.
Sure. So I think what we see here is the updated updates on the work plan. So as you can see, we've completed 2 activities so far. So one is activity 9, which was co-led by Hindu, and that looked at the inclusion of Indigenous peoples and local communities into national adaptation plans, NDCs, and other policies and communications under the platform. Also, the technical paper and the mapping of available funding has also been completed as well. The rest of the activities are broadly in line, and we're making progress in the co-leads. I thank you for your efforts. We're all trying to make progress on finalizing them ahead of COP26, and the only one that really is interrupted, as you see there, which is really unfortunate, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it's been interrupted. And that's the regional knowledge gatherings among knowledge holders in the different sociocultural regions. Of course, the online venue is, we try to do the best we can in these circumstances, but there are just some events that aren't appropriate to hold online, and unfortunately activity 2 is one of those. So hopefully we can see that reflected in the next work plan once we hopefully return to some state of normal and can see each other face to face, because I do know it is an important activity for many of the members here. So maybe we could go to next slide. And with that, I believe we're going to begin discussing activity 4, which has been co-led by Daly and myself, and I think I'll pass the floor over to Daly to provide some remarks on it.
Great, great. Thank you very much, Tom. I'll just try to be as quick as possible. So activity 4 was under the capacity for engagement function of the platform, and it mandated the organization of annual thematic training workshops to build capacity for engaging Indigenous peoples and the relevant work within the UN FCCC. Clearly, as Tom has just said, COVID-19 put a big stick in the spokes in terms of our in-person training workshops, but we were able to transition to the virtual delivery of those workshops. As everyone may recall, the objective was to increase the capacity of parties in the area of Indigenous knowledge, and specifically increasing the understanding, respect for, and enhancement of the ethical and equitable engagement of Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous knowledge holders, especially in relation to climate change. As noted here on this slide, we succeeded in putting forward 4 webinars that were held over 5 months. We were fortunate to have brought Indigenous representatives from all of the 7 sociocultural regions. We did have some technical difficulties in doing so, and I think that that's going to continue as a challenge for all of us. But nevertheless, we managed, and some of the main messages that emerged from the presentations by speakers as well as in the dialogue was the need for parties to build their capacity, continue to build their capacity to ethically and equitably engage with Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous knowledge holders, that such engagement should be fair and just and based upon the rights of Indigenous peoples, for example, as articulated in Article 31 of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, concerning our ownership, maintenance, and preservation of Indigenous knowledge, but also the corresponding state responsibility to give effect to that particular and specific right. Also, the key principles for engaging with Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous knowledge holders, and an emphasis on protocols or guidelines or rules or customs or practices by Indigenous peoples for engaging with their communities, with their knowledge holders, and the use of Indigenous knowledge. To also co-develop and co-create knowledge that will be responsive to climate change issues. We've already heard some comments about that in our discussion thus far, and some of that was revealed in this series of 4 webinars. And obviously within a rights-based framework or a human rights framework, and for these activities to be done in collaboration with Indigenous peoples. We're currently preparing to draft the summary report to capture the messages that came across throughout the 4 training workshops. We also will be concluding with a roundtable discussion of all the participants in the 4 workshops in order to ensure that we're not faced with any gaps in relation to the importance of the ethical and equitable engagement of Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous knowledge holders. We'll conclude that roundtable in September. We were fortunate to have a lot of very positive feedback and numerous recommendations that the training workshops or webinars be continued under the next work plan. Of course, we'll finalize activity 4 in the report and that roundtable event, but there seems to be a lot of value in these training workshops, and especially the opportunity to include participants from all of the 7 sociocultural regions to deliver their views and perspectives. So Obviously, they were virtual webinars. That wasn't our intention, but we do want to, and the concept note has embraced the idea of maintaining an in-person format at the next potential opportunity to ensure that we can carry this message forward, especially again to state party members, to really increase and enhance their capacity to engage Indigenous knowledge and to understand the value and the legitimacy of it, especially in relation to climate change. So I'll conclude there and just appreciate having had the opportunity and the support of the Secretariat, but more significantly, the participation of very diverse Indigenous people's representatives and experts on Indigenous knowledge throughout this series. So, Kriyanak, thank you, Tom. You may have something to add as the co-lead to the activity, and would welcome your remarks in that regard. But again, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Daly. Yeah, no, just from my side, I really appreciate the summary you gave. I would say, you know, on one hand, while it was very unfortunate that we couldn't do the meetings in person, at least the webinars are at least recorded, and I do think they're really helpful resources for all parties to review and to understand, because we did get some great contributions from a really broad global perspective of Indigenous peoples and other experts on how to engage ethically and equitably. And I would strongly recommend those who haven't had the chance to see the webinars to avail themselves or to share them broadly, because I do think while we didn't get to do it in person, we at least have them as a resource going forward, and they're available on the web portal. So I do hope that they continue to be useful for parties, because I know certainly they were useful from our party side. Yeah, and maybe with that, I will pause and see if there's any questions or comments from the other Facilitative Working Group members, and maybe I could ask Nina to stop screen sharing so I could see the broader group. So the floor is open in case there are any comments or questions. I see Rodion. Please go ahead, Rodion.
Yes, thank you very much. Because it's my first introduction, I would like to congratulate Hindu and you and all other colleagues for new wave of leadership and committed to work together. As to activity number 4, I would like to thank Daly and you, because I believe that one of our privileges is to invest to people, to their knowledge and to their awareness, and to increase their skills, how to meet in a proper way the climate change impacts, particularly at the domestic and local level. That is also, I believe, the biggest part of our commitment and overall activity. And also, secondly, in terms of inclusiveness, it's so great having Russian language also as part of the working language, because language is always a barrier for most of indigenous peoples living in Russia. So that is, again, it's a great effort, particular under the UNESCO Indigenous Language Decade. So I think we could also provide some kind of strong synergy and commitment and solidarity with indigenous languages. So that is my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodion. I really appreciate those comments, and certainly the inclusion of different languages certainly helps target the capacity and the engagement of everyone. So certainly echo those points, and really happy we were able to add that for, I think, webinar 3 and going forward from there. Any other comments or questions, reflections on this activity for the next work plan? The floor is open. I'm not seeing anyone. Daly, did you want to jump in with any concluding remarks, or shall we proceed?
No, I think that Rodian's comment is really important, and it was at the outset and starting with the first workshop, we were met with some difficulties about language and inclusion of languages, but by the time we concluded, and especially his reference in regard to Russian language inclusion, I think this is really important. It also enhanced the not only the content of that particular training webinar, but participation across the board. So the only other thing that I'll say is that in terms of the positive feedback that was gained, the approach that was used, I think, may be well suited for a host of other activities, but we can look at, for example, or explore the possibilities of the method used for increasing youth engagement, which has been referenced already, but I leave this to the broader discussion about the second work plan. So thank you again.
Thank you, Daly. I see Hindu has her hand up. Please go ahead, Hindu.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. Thank you, Daly, and yourself, Tom, for really facilitating these activities. Just in addition, I really fully support what Rodion said in the language. Maybe we can, we should include it. And I think maybe we should also put it, if we have in person, it's maybe more helpful for the peoples, because online it's very limited for the training for those peoples who only got this access. And then lastly, I think also the training we said as in the capacity building, it's building the capacity of Indigenous peoples and building the capacity of the state. But for now it's going just to one side. So how we can make it also both sides going and forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Hindu. I've been told that I'm having microphone problems again. Can you hear me now clearly? Great. No, I think those are important points, Hindu, and certainly as we look to the next work plan, I think giving ourselves future FWG members the flexibility to adjust the capacity building workshops and the themes of them, whether they're targeted at parties or Indigenous peoples or local communities. I think that will be key to going forward, and certainly making sure there's a balance between all three, because certainly there's lessons to be learned from all sides and capacity to be built. Any other requests from the floor? I'm not seeing any, so thanks again, Daly, for Pasang.
Yeah. Thank you. I thought to get the opportunity also to reflect back with many thanks for Daly and Thomas for your wonderful work on the activity 4. This is very important activity for all of us. Build our capacity, but also build the capacity of the state parties and the other bodies, especially not just understanding what is climate change or what is role of our important, but the most important part here is building the capacity of the state parties or policy makers or negotiators, how important role and contribution Indigenous people have played for the generation. So the connection of the Indigenous people with the nature and the contribution for intact of the nature and biodiversity ecosystem, not being able to understand the connectivity, the symbiotic relation with this one, the knowledge systems that has contributed for whole sustaining the ecosystem, because not being able to understand that linkages. So Indigenous people have been suffering day after day after day. So how can we build the capacity of our negotiators or state parties or decision makers or policy makers for that interconnections of the symbiotic relation of Indigenous people with the nature? So that knowledge to build the capacity, I think we need to continue this kind of activity continuously throughout in the coming years also, because just building the capacity at the global level is important. But as I said earlier, where also regional, national, local capacity is very important, and that's where the matters comes from, because that's ultimately where our focus is there. So I would like to encourage that we continue this theme, simultaneously in all levels, and also with the help of different all the bodies who have been closely observing this negotiation. Also, this is also their role and responsibility to joining hands for building the capacity of indigenous people, but also the building the capacity of the state parties and also other bodies. Thank you, Thomas and Delhi.
Thank you, Pisang, and fully agree. I think it's an important thing to continue forward, and certainly more work to be done on that front. Any other requests from the floor before we move to the next activity? I'm not seeing any, so thank you again, Daly, for giving such a great summary and for our continue. Oh, Elvira would like the floor. Elvira, please go ahead. I believe.
Gracias. Sí, quería hacer un comentario en relación, y más que un comentario, tal vez una pregunta a los colíderes. Comparto plenamente la necesidad de seguir trabajando en este tema de sensibilización, de visibilización del conocimiento indígena y la sensibilización hacia los pueblos, pero también hacia las partes. Mi pregunta es cómo, seguramente esta actividad va a seguir, pero cómo podemos traducirla en instrumentos que creo que es ahí donde finalmente están muchas veces los avances concretos, ¿no? De poder incorporar este conocimiento en instrumentos de gestión del cambio climático. Me pregunto, por ejemplo, si esto puede traducirse en las NDCs, en indicadores en las NDCs o en los planes de adaptación, si consideran los colíderes de esta actividad que puede haber una aplicación práctica de esto. Esta es mi pregunta para ellos.
Thanks, Elvira. I see, Daly, you've taken your mic off, so please feel free to take the first response.
Yeah, thank you, Elvira. I think that's a really, really important question. So thank you for posing the question. And I think it's also something that was the undercurrent in the reference that was made earlier about the importance of the NDCs and the national action plans and the desire to do something in the next work plan that actually creates some action, especially at the local level or the domestic or national level. I think that one of the important outcomes of this series of training workshops was how the participants spoke about their customs and practices, but more significantly about their rights in terms of the protocols, the guidelines, the basic rules for the utilization of Indigenous knowledge and engaging Indigenous knowledge holders. So one possible outcome to get at your question is how those are framed or developed by Indigenous peoples themselves or the Indigenous peoples concerned. For example, there are a number of different resources that were collected through the activity where Indigenous peoples have, and especially through institutions doing research, where they have put in place their own guidelines and protocols for use of Indigenous knowledge. And I think that really is the key, is how do we then co-produce knowledge in an ethical and equitable, fair and just fashion in order to inform the NDCs, in order to inform the national action plans, and also to inform decisions within the context of the UN FCCC, within the context of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that these basic guidelines or protocols are really the starting point for the co-production of knowledge. Science and Indigenous knowledge and the best of both to inform decisions, especially at the local level, at the national level, so that these different scales are then also embracing what Indigenous peoples have to offer. And I think that's where we're going to see the most traction generated in terms of the use of Indigenous knowledge. And if it's done in a genuinely ethical and equitable way, that many issues can be identified and solutions can be advance through that kind of dialogue. So I really do think that some of the strongest evidence will be at the micro level rather than at the macro level, but change needs to take place at every scale, at the local level, the regional level, the national level, the international level. I hope that helps to answer your question. That's how I see this particular issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Daly. And I have Yo and then Andrea, and I think we might stop there just because we do have half an hour at the end of the session reserved for contributors, and I want to respect that time. So Yo, please go ahead.
Thanks very much. Just very quickly, we do have activity 6 with a set of recommendations, and I just want to make sure that we are able to reflect as much as possible the outcomes of this particular activity 4 set of webinars in whatever recommendations we put together for activity 6. So when we come to that particular activity, please take a look at the set of recommendations. And also noting that activity 5 is focusing on outreach and dissemination of training materials and so forth. And I'm wondering if there's any way to kind of include what has been produced by this activity 4 in the sort of materials that'll go out to different levels in activity 5. Thanks.
Thanks, Yo. A good segue to activity 5 coming up, but Andrea, please go ahead.
Thank you. And I would like to make an additional request of you as co-leads, and that is that maybe we have an internal capacity building discussion on what is meant by co-production of knowledge, because I've engaged in discussions with some of our colleagues from Latin America and also Africa and North America that we don't really have or understand that concept very well. And I'm speaking as a member here, that, you know, our language is produced by relationship with the natural world. We refer to it as our ways of knowing. And even in our Yaqui people, we say, you know, this knowledge is its own teaching. We don't even have teachers from our own people for some of this knowledge that we have, for our healers, for example. So I think it will be, I know it's a term used quite extensively in the Arctic region, but it's not one that is understood well, or utilize that terminology in some in Indigenous peoples in some of the other regions. So that might be something that you might want to do a workshop for us on what you mean by that and some examples, so that we can understand it better and kind of join in that, you know, that understanding that you have daily in particular. And so that's a respectful request, and just say that we have had conversations. Do you know what that means exactly? We don't have that cultural paradigm, I guess. So it might be important, if we're going to utilize that terminology going forward, that we have an opportunity to understand it better and see if maybe we do engage in some of those activities, but we just don't call it that. but you know, we refer to our ways of knowing is more of a interactive relationship with the natural, which I know also you have in the Arctic. But anyway, that's just a request from you for an additional capacity building workshop for us. I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. And what I might suggest is, as Daly and I work on the report, and once we have a draft that we share with the rest of the Facilitative Working Group members, maybe we could take some time and discuss the report and that point specifically, if that's agreeable with Daly. I think that might be the next best opportunity, and I see her nodding. So we'll definitely take that forward and can have a fuller discussion on it when we get a draft report going. So with that, and cognizant of the time, I'd like to move to activity 5, which is the outreach and dissemination plan and thematic training materials. And I think Yo linked this nicely for possible linkages between activity 4 and activity 5. And it was co-led by Jane and Joseph. So with that, I'd like to invite them to take the floor and provide a short update.
Great. Mahalo nui, Cameron, and mahalo nui, everybody, for the time on this. I'm going to give a quick update on activity number 5 that myself and Joseph led. Activity number 5 is developing an outreach and dissemination plan, as well as thematic training materials. It was part of the capacity for engagement function of our platform. The outreach and dissemination of all of our LCIPP activities, events, and ongoing work has been flagged as crucial for meaningful engagement and active participation. The objective of this plan is to familiarize Indigenous peoples, local communities, parties, and other relevant stakeholders with the action items within our platform and work plan, as well as mobilizing the promotion and participation of work plan activities and results as they are achieved. The LCIPP web portal is the main channel for sharing these materials and facilitating further compilation and dissemination of the training materials that we produce. To share information and raise awareness of both the LCIPP, the outreach and dissemination plan will include printed materials, multimedia formats, and events. The thematic training materials are being compiled and will consist of resources developed and or collected through other work plan activities, including activity number 4, which was just discussed. So we're trying to bridge some of the work that we're all doing kind of in different silos through this dissemination plan. Currently, the plan has been reviewed and approved by the FWG. It's integral in ensuring the continued involvement and participation of Indigenous peoples, local communities, and all stakeholders. The FWG will be asked to review and approve any thematic training materials that are produced by July 30th. And a communications component should be included in the draft second 3-year work plan to ensure that the appropriate and accessible sharing of information is maintained for that work as well. Joseph, if you have anything else to add to that, please feel free to jump in, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just firstly, I fully subscribe to all the words said by Jane. And what I would like to add is that concerning this outreach and dissemination, especially concerning this and the strategy and the channels for dissemination, we have always to keep in mind that this is not one-way street. We have always used these channels also for collection of feedback information and for incorporating all knowledge we collect through the feedback to our future work. And this is also linked to details, the incoming details of the new work plan, where we have to see how to improve the knowledge already collected using our developed strategy for outreach and dissemination under our activity 5.
Thank you very much, Jane and Joseph, for that comprehensive summary. The floor is open to FWG members in case they have any questions or comments to pose to Jane or Joseph. I'm not seeing any. Maybe I'll just pause for one more moment to see if anyone has anything. So it doesn't look like it. I think that's because you've both done such a great job with the tech. Oh, Hindu, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Joseph and Jen for all the work that you did, even with a difficult time to make an outreach and dissemination of all the material, because it's really not easy. I think maybe we can also take it as a recommendation for the next work, how those materials can be also translated and adapt to the language that our regions can understand. And maybe we can also think about a new channel of communications. Of course, we have the website where we can share, disseminate the information, but it is not everyone who can go to the website. So maybe the adapted one, I mean, in my region, it is WhatsApp. So people use a lot of WhatsApp to share videos or to share also documents, materials for those who can read. And maybe we can also try to think of having a summary of the key outcome of the activities. And then when we have those summaries, so we can also make a small video of 2 minutes in our mother tongue. And those videos can be shared through WhatsApp, because I know that in my regions and of course in my community, people sharing a lot of videos or messages in the languages that we understand. So that can help maybe to disseminate. So if we can just think about those kind of adapted outreach to indigenous communities and local peoples, so that maybe can help us to better have our information out rather than being just focused on the box of internet or social media or whatever, paper, printing, or language block is. Thank you so much, Coach. And thank you so much for you.
I see Andrea would like the floor. Andrea, please go ahead.
Yes, just very briefly, I agree with what Hindu said, and I would also like, maybe we could produce something even more accessible, is short clips on Indigenous radio. There was just, there's a global movement of Indigenous radio stations because that's accessible to many that don't have internet or even video. They can hear in their own language or in the country colonial language radio clips. And in fact, there was just a hearing on support for Indigenous radio at the Inter-American Human Rights Court. And this is a movement that's happening, I think, all over the world. So we might consider using radio and Indigenous radio stations to disseminate some of the information as well, to make it truly accessible to a broad range. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. Jane, Joseph, would you like to respond to those comments? I think both were quite good and informative.
Yeah, just wanted to say I've made note of that. I think those are both really great suggestions for the next phase of this dissemination plan. So thank you both for those.
Great, thank you. Any last comments? I'm not seeing any, so thank you very much, Jane and Joseph. I think it is really good work, and I look forward to looking towards some new and innovative ways, and really realizing that strategy that you work so hard on in the next work plan, because I think communication will continue to be a key part of the platform. So thank you again for your hard work on it. So the last part of our meeting is really meant to be carving out some dedicated space for us to hear, not from FWG members, but from their contributors, from the caucus, from parties who are observing, to provide us with your reflections on what you've heard today, whether it's on your reflections on the 3-year work plan, or activity 4 or activity 5, or anything else that you'd really like to share. We have about 25 minutes left, and we really do want to hear from you. So please put your name in the chat, or indicate it by raising your hand. The Secretariat will create a speakers list, and we'll be granting you the ability to speak. If you'd prefer not to speak, we're also monitoring the chat. And please feel free to submit written comments. Everything that you say will be captured by the Secretariat who's taking notes, and we really do want to hear from you. I see a question from, sorry, I saw Ke before it closed, so maybe I could ask Ke to take the floor and pose the question. So I don't think, yeah, Chad's giving the floor. And apologies for not being able to see your full name, but I believe it's Ke and then PHA. That's all I can see, so please take the floor. So it seems like there might be some technical difficulties there, so I could just read out the question or comment. Should provide the sustainable livelihood, which can be a nature-based solution, can be the most suitable approach for helping the Indigenous people, as well as raising their awareness and contribution in this climate action. So I think it's a link between sustainable livelihoods, nature-based solutions, and Indigenous peoples. I don't know if any of the FWG members would like to respond to it, but otherwise we can take note and continue to hear on. Hassan, I see your hand is up, so please take the floor, and then Andrea.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. I think the queries from Kwepan is more discussing on if we really want to have a sustainable livelihoods. The sustainable livelihoods is how can we come up with a nature-based solution, which is really interlinked with the cultural practices of Indigenous people, because Indigenous people definitely this is very relevant in our discussion also, because at the moment there has been a lot of discourse going on that ultimate solution to address the climate change is a nature-based solution. Even in the UNCCC or CBD or other bilateral, multilateral agencies everywhere, now the focus is nature-based solution. But for the Indigenous people, nature-based solution is part of our culture, part of our nature, part of our spiritual, cultural, and day-to-day livelihoods. So what Indigenous people in Asia and also Indigenous people around the globe also focusing on, that when we talk about the nature-based solution, that the rights of Indigenous people, they especially for continuation of the traditional knowledge and cultural practices, if it is respected or continued, nature-based solution comes along with that one. And people and the nature cannot be separated, because in the name of the nature-based solution, if the Indigenous people are separated, and it will not be sustainable. So I really agree with, also it's in the form of the question, but it's very explicit that the nature-based solution is integrated approach of the day-to-day lives of Indigenous people. And for that one, it needs to be enhanced further if we really want to have a nature-based solution to deal with the climate change. Yeah, I hope I'm clear with the queries. Yeah, thank you, Thomas.
Thanks, Basang. Andrea, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, just to build on the points that Pasang raised, when we were preparing for the UN Climate Summit a couple of years ago, nature-based solutions was one of the tracks, and we had a lot of discussion, multi-regional, all the regions involved, including a preparatory meeting we had in Mexico. And we had a lot of problems and issues with the concept of nature-based solutions. It's kind of like green economy or, other kinds of terminologies that somebody comes up with that don't really fit our way of looking at things. And a lot of times we're finding nature-based solutions is used to justify things like carbon offsets and forest offsets. And, and I just want to stress that for Indigenous peoples, we always had sustainable livelihoods. We have to see what is impeding our sustainable livelihoods now. And we also never considered humans to be separate from nature. We consider that to be the source of the problem we're having right now globally, rather than a solution. So these are just some concerns that have been raised. We did respond and say those kinds of things when we made our collective Indigenous intervention on that topic in particular at the Climate Summit. And it continues through the discussions even in Article 6 about, the carbon trading, forest offsets, those kinds of things. I agree that the rights of Indigenous peoples to maintain, as the international conventions say, our ways of subsistence, our sustainable livelihoods, really are more of a rights-based focus than something discussing bringing in what's being called nature-based solutions. So those are just some concerns, and we could certainly discuss that further. But that's what many Indigenous peoples, at least, view the issue of nature-based solutions. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea, and again, thanks, Pasang. I think those are important points, and something that I've heard personally as well, and certainly recognize the
and Thomas, can I just add a little bit another part very quickly?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So another fear for Indigenous peoples is, like in the name of the nature-based solution, like offsetting, right? It's like, you try to have like the carbon trading and offsetting these carbon emissions, in the name of the nature-based solution without respecting the rights of Indigenous people is another fear for Indigenous people for losing their, losing their home, losing their land, losing their values. So, this need to be a part of our discussion, actually, if we really want to deal with a sustainable solution to the while addressing the climate change. Yeah, so I would also would like to highlight on that part, in the name of the nature-based solution, there is also the coming of the fear of the offsetting the carbon emission. So, this is underneath in the name of the nature-based solution. Because so if you really want to have a nature-based solution, the ultimate solution is respecting the rights of Indigenous people, especially for continuation of the traditional values and knowledge system and rights over their ancestral domain. Thank you.
Thanks, Pasang. Graham, I see you would like the floor. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Really, really important points, and want to echo Pasang and Andrea's responses. I think I just have two additions. One is, I think it's important to acknowledge that nature-based solutions, as was articulated, isn't a getaway free for the need for rapid decarbonization. And, I think central to the work that we're doing and the summary points that Andrea shared is, there are commitments within the Paris Agreement for what that looks like and what, achieving a 1.5 or 2 degree future requires us to do. The second that I feel like is often missed in the nature-based solutions discourse is around what are the requirements for nature to thrive in itself, and what's our role in making sure that we let nature do what it's supposed to do, as opposed to continuously harming and extracting it. And I think it's often, at least in the way in which I see kind of non-Indigenous folks frame nature-based solutions, as very instrumental. It's how can we manipulate nature to benefit humans again, instead of what Pasang and Andrea said about how do we acknowledge the reciprocal relationship and duty that we have with everything around us. And I just say, this is an interesting opportunity, I think, for the work plan of the FWG, really investigating and kind of critically deconstructing these concepts that seem to permeate the UNFCCC. Like, there's a lot of techno jargon that gets away from what we actually need to do and what we know is the right answer to address the problem that we're identifying, which is we need to stop burning fossil fuels. So I wonder if, we can think about what are those strategic responses that the FWG and by extension, Indigenous peoples can provide, and really kind of reframing and rethinking about these narratives from a lens that really acknowledges that they may not always be exactly what they're, purporting to be. And I see that potentially as an opportunity moving forward, also as it informs, our commitment to reviewing the NDCs and the NAPs, and also the kind of future global stocktake, all of which we likely will see, parties using nature-based solutions or characterizing them in a certain way. And I think there's an interesting opportunity to really be ready for what that looks like and how do we analyze that. So that's all I wanted to say, Miigwech.
Thanks, Graham. I think those are important considerations for the coming days and how we can integrate that work into the work plan, because it does seem to be a really important point. I see Elvira would like the floor next, so please go ahead, Elvira.
Gracias. Sí, no puedo dejar de escapar estas reflexiones últimas que han planteado los hermanos, y creo que es importante que este espacio, la actividad previa y esta actividad 5 ayuden a poner en la mesa en la medida de lo posible y de la enorme diversidad que tenemos en los pueblos indígenas, esa matriz de conocimiento propia de nosotros, ¿no? Como apropiamos un lenguaje que de pronto no nos calza, no nos representa, y este espacio debería ser, estas dos actividades deberían ayudar, deberían contribuir a poner en la mesa y acuñar categorías en las que podamos entrar en consenso y que nos representen. Obviamente, la adaptación basada en la naturaleza tiene enormes limitaciones para partir del conocimiento indígena. Primero porque para los indígenas, para nosotros es clave entender la naturaleza como una pertenencia a la naturaleza. No hay una separación de hombre y naturaleza en nuestra cosmovisión. Esa es la primera raíz de que nos diferencia de separar de estas visiones que separan a la naturaleza como un objeto o como un recurso. Ahora, en las estrategias que planteemos tenemos que siempre anteponer esta cosmovisión indígena para plantear y para acuñar estos conceptos y nuevas categorías que nos ayuden a ver a poner en mesa los conocimientos de los pueblos indígenas desde su propia matriz de comprensión del mundo. Entonces creo que esta es una enorme oportunidad y un desafío el pensar en acuñar categorías que realmente nos identifiquen y nos representen. Estoy pensando en la resiliencia indígena, por ejemplo. Estoy pensando en la adaptación basada en sistemas de vida, donde lo comunitario está completamente integrado o la naturaleza está completamente integrada a lo comunitario. Entonces, seguramente hay muchas cosas para debatir ahí, pero creo que es muy importante que este espacio que se ha logrado con la plataforma sirva para acuñar y para poner en la mesa esta visión de los pueblos indígenas en categorías que nos representen y no solamente apropiar este lenguaje que viene y que ya se ha construido desde otras matrices de conocimiento. Solo eso, gracias.
Thank you, Elvira. I think that's a consistent point that we've heard throughout this short discussion, is that, yeah, there seems to be an imposition of terminology and figuring out a way or to clarify from the FWG point of view and from Indigenous people's point of view. I think is key and something that we should look at for the next work plan and to inform our discussions for the rest of our 3 days here. Would anyone else like to come in on this or another point that's been raised today? not seeing any requests from the floor, but maybe I'll pause for just a little while longer. Daly, you took your mic off?
Yeah, I was going to touch the raised hand, but anyway, I think that what has been said about nature-based solutions has actually been at the core of what Indigenous peoples have been bringing forward to the international community for ever. I mean, if we think about our worldviews, our world perspectives, about our customs and practices and institutions, our values, and so forth, that it has been an effort to find even those magical terms that create the understanding that Indigenous peoples do have a different worldview and a different world perspective and a different way of life that and we've been working at, whether it's in the area of recognition of our human rights or recognition of the impacts of climate change upon our communities and advancing Indigenous knowledge, gaining understanding of our traditional economies, whatever it happens to be, that our identity and what is, again, the essence of Indigenous peoples has been right at the core of every effort. But now the challenge is, how do we take that really integral character of our identity and advance it in discussions with all others. I guess that's the part that I'm having difficulty with myself, is how do we distill these important messages in relation to a dialogue about nature-based solutions? What are the few key words that would generate the kind of understanding that is needed? And for us to think really carefully and really hard about what those answers are in the short term, meaning just in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, because from an Indigenous perspective, it's been millennia, right? We've been accumulating this knowledge and adapting to our environment and are a part of the environment. How do we distill it for others to fully understand these relationships and the importance of them? And so what are the key activities and then in the next work plan in the short term to generate a greater understanding? It's a huge challenge, and I certainly don't have the answers. I think collectively as the Facilitative Working Group, and especially I think it's important, something Graham said earlier about the contributions of the Indigenous Peoples Forum on climate change, that I know that some solutions are there. It's just how do we take the time to carefully articulate them in a work plan that's going to be helpful to everybody. But my main point is that our whole lives as Indigenous peoples, we have been working to do this, and our next generation, it'll be the same, and the next generation, it'll be the same, at least for this generation. And I was pleased to see it acknowledged by young people that we don't have to convince the world that climate change is real. That task has been done. We don't have to convince the world that Indigenous peoples are distinct peoples. Of course, we still have challenges in that regard, but at least this next generation doesn't have to carry that particular burden in the same way that our forebears have had to carry that particular message. So, I mean, there's a lot that could be said specifically about nature-based solutions, and the comments that Andrea made earlier about the green economy, the blue economy, sustainable development for Indigenous peoples, that our basic cultural identity is right at the core of all of this. But I'm saying things that everybody knows already, so I just be quiet. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Daly, and I appreciate those comments very much. Just a quick housekeeping note that translation will end in 5 minutes. We do have half an hour at the end of each session to allow contributors to offer their thoughts from the floor, not just FWG members. So please, I would make a note that for those who are watching and not FWG members, we do want to hear your voices over the next 3 days, and please make a note of that. If we don't get you to you today, your contributions are still very much welcome over the next 3 days. With that, I don't want to stop this enriching discussion, so I'll just pause in case there's any other comments from the floor. And I'm not seeing any, so, oh, Alberto has his hand up. Please take the floor, Alberto. And to answer your question, Tonga, yes, you can take the floor after Alberto.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. No, I just wanted to repeat what I think that everybody's been pretty eloquent, including Ram, I think, stated it more succinctly, that they're destroying the earth, and they're expecting, they're doing the same thing they've been doing and expecting a different result. I think one of the opportunities the Facilitative Working Group has is addressing the COP in the much more than the 2 minutes allowed to the caucus. And that is because I believe that even any knowledge holder, a true Indigenous knowledge holder addressing the COP would give them that message. You are destroying the earth, you are polluting the earth, and unless you stop, things are going to get a lot worse. So I would hope that part of the working group that has been trying to do the roundtable at the face-to-face would, after the roundtable, if the knowledge holders would be willing to address the COP through one of them, I think that message could be delivered now and very clearly, because I do agree it's a message we have to deliver, and we have to deliver it quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto. Tonga Rai, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Yeah, my comment is, I think it goes overall on the work of local communities and Indigenous peoples platform. As we see this platform as a platform to bring unheard experiences and overlooked realities. So when we talk about capacity building, information materials, trainings, or training materials, I think all of these activities should look into two different dimensions. Why I'm saying this is, I think the capacity building also should focus on the capacity building of the parties in order for them to understand what is the worldviews of Indigenous peoples, how we Indigenous people interpret the climate science, what science we are living up to now since generations. This is very important for parties to understand, because this is one of our position. We have been living with the nature, and we have been adapting in particular environment and climatic conditions for a generation. That is what it is, adaptation. And that is what needs to be incorporated in national adaptation plans. That is what is needed to be incorporated in nationally determined contribution. So capacity building materials and informations also should bring the realities and the information from Indigenous communities to the UNFCCC and to the ministries for them to understand the climate science of Indigenous peoples, the worldviews of Indigenous peoples, and on the other way around, these information materials and trainings also should bring the discourse of UNFCCC to the Indigenous communities. So often we forget this two-way communication and two-way dissemination of information. We have been following information from UNFCCC to country level and country level to the community level, to the Indigenous community, to many cases, but I rarely see information coming from Indigenous community to a national level and to the international level. So UNFCCC talks about best available science. They want to get information from the best available science. I wonder what is climate science? Because when I go to our communities and then we see people living in the communities for generations, and they have a lot of distinct knowledge. This is a part of science. So I think those different dimension of science should also come into the light in the UNFCCC. So this capacity building and information materials should cover those parts. And then second one, so I think this platform, local communities and Indigenous peoples platform, is a distinct platform. So it should think in a very distinct way in terms of the process, participation of Indigenous peoples and local communities and parties, and also in terms of substance, in terms of the content of the discussion, in terms of the agenda, a setting of the discussion. If we cannot, or if you, the facilitative working group members, cannot bring the real substance, real agenda of Indigenous peoples and local communities, then it doesn't make the platform distinct from other platforms. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tunga. Some really constructive suggestions there, and a good message forward as we consider what the next work plan looks like to take advantage of the distinct nature of the FWG and really deliver on the expectations of the platform. So I thank you for those remarks. I know that we're pretty much out of time for today. I do want to stress that there'll be opportunities the next 3 days for contributors to continue to take the floor. I'd like to thank all those who have spoken. Before turning to the Secretariat for some housekeeping notes on the next meeting, I would like to just pass it to my co-chair to see if there is any reflections that she would like to offer before we close.
Yeah, just thank you very much, Tom, for all this work, and thank you for all of you for this speaking. Just from the beginning, I didn't say thank you to all my Indigenous brother and sisters for your support, and also for our internal consultations and all the nomination. And I hope also my brother Tuntiak hear all, and if there is
whatever she likes, whatever.
If there is any need for Tuntiak to better understand or to join our meeting, just to let us know, and we will figure out how will be the interpretation. Thank you so much, Tom. And yeah.
Thanks, Hindu, and thank you again to all the contributors. Maybe on a personal note, I'd just like to thank everyone for their faith in us as co-chairs. For Canada, it's National Indigenous Peoples Day, which was chosen because we're at the solstice, as Andrea has mentioned in the chat, at least the solstice in the Northern Hemisphere, which I know has particular significance for many Indigenous peoples and cultures around the world. So it's very nice to be here with all of you today on that day and sharing these important reflections. So with that, I'd like to thank you, and I'll just turn it over to the Secretariat briefly to provide some housekeeping updates if there are any.
Thanks so much to everyone and the co-chairs. It's been such an interesting conversation listening. I just wanted to reassure all of you that the Secretariat is listening. We're taking notes. The proceedings from all of your conversations are being captured in the meeting reports. That's the FWG 5 meeting report. And all of you have a chance then to look at that when it's in draft form. For tomorrow, for all of you, please use the same link that you used today. That link will be good today, tomorrow, and all the way until the end of the meeting. Tomorrow we'll continue to have translation in Spanish, French, and also back into English for those languages. And if you have any questions, technical or otherwise, just write to the Secretariat. We'll help you in any way that we can. Back over to you, co-chairs. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Coco. So with that, I'd like to just echo my thanks again and look forward to seeing you all tomorrow at the same time for some continued important discussions on the work plan that we have to finalize by the end of this year, as well as some future looking activities as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.